So, Sean, first question. How has your mental game and mental health in general been a part of your football career, would you say?
Mm. That's a great question because for me, it really wasn't much of my game until the latter part of my career, or even once it ended. So when I played, when I played professionally in the NFL in the '90s, the mental aspect of sports really wasn't a big deal, and certainly practices such as yoga, meditation, mindfulness, those were just considered like out there. When I was playing in the NFL, my wife who was into yoga, she kept saying, "Hey, you need to do yoga. It's going to help. It'll help your body. It'll help your mind." But for me, I just didn't. Um, it, I didn't gravitate towards that, or I wasn't open to that because at the time most of the training was all like very physical. It was all about hard, and so if you weren't training hard, you weren't doing enough. And there's certainly that aspect today exists in training, but now there is more of a mental game. And so for me now, I now work with athletes and with yoga, meditation, mindfulness, and fortunately now it's a lot more acceptable, so to speak, or almost to the point, if you're not bringing in some sort of mental aspect into your game, you're missing out. And I think luckily there's been a lot of big time athletes who have gotten into mindfulness, such as like Jamie Anderson, snowboarding. She's like super into yoga. LeBron James is really into meditation. Kobe Bryant was really into meditation. And so now, luckily, a lot more athletes are a lot more open to it.
Yeah, that's such a great answer. What do you think was the tipping point for you when you went from yoga is like something I don't want to do and maybe a little dumb to I'm going to actually become a yoga teacher?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me was just, when my career ended, I went through, I guess you could say, like an identity crisis. For a long
Mhm.
time, I always dreamed of being a professional athlete from like age 8 until when my career ended, which was age 25. And for me, like a lot of athletes, it didn't end on my own terms, so to speak. It ended because I had a lot of injuries, and so I just wasn't given another shot. So it took me a few years to move beyond that, and that's where yoga really came in, where I started to realize that sports wasn't everything in life. Football certainly wasn't everything in life, and that it did so much for me, not just for my body. It helped heal my body, but also just helped me move on, and not be stuck in the past and living in the past, or worrying about like where my life was going in the future. And because it's helped me so much, body and mind, that's where I decided, hey, this is what I want to do professionally, so I can possibly help others, other athletes going through that, but just anybody, athletes, non-athletes, who struggle with anything. That I knew that that yoga or meditation, everyone can find some benefit, that they can use it in their lives.
Yeah, I love that response. It's great what you've made out of it. So, one of the last questions, what do you think about the NCAA, like colleges, pro organizations? Do you think they are doing enough to support mental health? Do you think they've gotten better?
Yeah, short answer, no. They have certainly gotten better. They've come from a place where there was zero support for athletes and mental health, and it wasn't even that long ago. Maybe what, 10, 15 years ago. um, but nowadays there's actually, if you look at some of the schools, like I know University of Michigan, Wisconsin, they'll have actual staff members who their main responsibility is mental health with athletes. So it's certainly gaining steam. And I think the more it gains steam in college, I think when these athletes go from college to pro, they're going to expect the same thing. There's really not much of it in I know there's very, very little help with mental health when it comes to the NFL. It's just not. It's one of their many weaknesses when it comes to taking care of their athletes, their whole being. But yeah, it's definitely getting better, and I think it's only going to grow. The thing is, which I think is so helpful, that so many young athletes, college athletes, are so outspoken about it, and the more they speak out about it, I think the more it's becoming mainstream.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've actually reached out to a lot of college athletes and they're very open to talking.
Mhm.
So it's awesome. All
Yeah,
right,
there was a
last,
point where, oh, I'm sorry.
oh no, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like when I played, which wasn't too long ago, like 20, 25 years ago, like if I brought up anything, any mental health issue with my coach, they would just, they would assume you're weak. And I think we were finally moving away from that.
Right. Would you say that culture is also on the team too? Did you ever talk
Mhm.
about?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So like players, like I know for like in my situation, like men, like if I talk about like my mind being weak or like I have problems at home and I want to speak to someone, like men would other players would like look like, why do you need to do that? Like just play hard and set that to the side. And so they're yeah, it's definitely an issue with the athletes as well. And I think also like in sports where the coaches are like older, where they were not part of this movement, they have a hard time. They're not where the actual the shift is happening. So I think the more it comes from the younger generation, and the more that, because the older coaches have responsibility too to be open to this. That I think that there'll be more progress made.
Yeah, totally. So, last question, and then you're off the hook. What do you think is one tip you could give athletes that not a lot of people talk about?
Mm. I think it would be for young athletes is to be mindful of your body. That you see a lot of young athletes today who specialize in a single sport at a very young age, and this is a new thing. And athletes used to play multiple sports. It was always very encouraged. They didn't do year round. They didn't have all these private coaches, et cetera, et cetera. That we're seeing a lot of young athletes as young as 12, 14 have overuse injuries, like with their shoulders and other joints. And also there is also no mental health help for these young athletes as well. And so I think even at a young age, it's good for them to bring in, whether it's like, bring in a little meditation, a little yoga, a little something into it. But I think, there's just seems to be a heck of a lot more pressure on young athletes today to get really, really good at a very, very young age. And, if you're going to make it to the big leagues, or if you're going to make it to like Division 1 or whatever the goal is, like it's going to happen. And it doesn't have to be like quantity. It doesn't have to be tons of training. It just has to be done in a moderate amount, and taking time off to heal, not just like like not just their bodies having rest, but I think it's also good to have more mental rest. And I think right now it seems like that movement is like the opposite. It's more and more and more and more and more year-round training, and a lot of athletes are burning out physically, mentally, and some quite often both by the time they hit like 16, 17, 18 years old.
Yeah, totally. I think a lot of kids and parents could definitely hear that message.